All right, we've been keeping track of Janet Yellen. She's speaking in Chicago right now, and I'll just cut to the gist of her remarks because we got them ahead of time here, that she wants to raise interest rates. I mean, that is very clear, and she wants to do it sooner rather than later, which would be at a meeting, I think, in a couple of weeks. So that is a given, and the markets aren't panicking on that. In fact, these days, rate hikes are not being greeted typically with the sell-off you'd expect, or certainly the way it had in the past. Maybe because it's a reflection of a good underlying economy. Who knows? A lot of people are surprised at this. You know, our bitter boomers are not, because they're boomers, and they're not always bitter, but they're always right. Charlie Gasparino is here. We've got Steve Leeb here. Lizzie Wicked Macdonald, and Fox Business senior editor Charlie Brady. You talk about the genius section there. All right, Lizzie. This notion that she says it's coming, coming, probably quarter point. She didn't say the exact quarter point, but everyone has interpreted that to mean 2 weeks rates go up.
Yeah, the market's not really reacting. I mean, where there's supposed to be 4 rate hikes last year, I guess people on Wall Street are thinking, oh, it's coming. All right, quarter point, gradual quarter point increases. I think right now, you're right. In the past, the markets would have sold off and had a rocky ride of it. But now it's sort of like there's widespread confidence growing in the economy, whereas under the Obama economy, it felt shaky. Right now, people may be able to take it in stride.
What do you think, bud?
Well, rates are going up, I mean, for the right reason. You've got, job growth accelerating. We had jobless claims number last week was the lowest in 44 years. We've got the February jobs report coming out next Friday. That's right before the Fed meeting.
You live for those days.
Oh, it's everything.
You really do.
But depending on how that comes out next week, that'll probably seal the deal for a rate hike if it's a strong number.
What happens when we get that rate hike?
I think very little happens. First of all, we're still at negative interest rates. I mean, one of the most bogus things you hear out of Washington. I mean, that's not bogus, but I mean that the Fed just pays attention to the one inflation indicator, which they call PCE, which is lower than any other indicator. Cleveland, 1.7%.
Sure.
The Cleveland Fed, okay, they do things.
We should have a couple beers and talk about the PCE.
Right. I mean, there's no reason to pick the PCE other than the fact that it's lower.
You did.
No, I know, but the Fed does. That's what they base it. They're trying to get inflation to 2%.
Is a rate hike justifiable to you?
It's more than justifiable.
Yeah,
what are they waiting for?
All right, what do you think?
Here's my one worry, and I know on Twitter they call me a worry wart all the time.
Well, they call you a lot worse than that.
And a bitter boomer.
Yeah, bitter boomer. I think that there has to be some coordination between monetary policy and fiscal policy. And when you talk to investors, what they worry about is Yellen jumping the gun on raising rates before Trump has a fully digested...
Maybe she wants to do that.
That's a great point.
You think she wants to zing?
If she does that, the markets, and it could slow the economy before he even gets his tax cuts through. And that's where that lack of coordination could screw things up. And because if you know, Leeb, you're big on this, is the market overvalued or not right now?
I think it's crazy. It's very much overvalued.
Okay, so if the market is overvalued now and you start raising rates without, at the same time, the concomitant fiscal policy response, what could happen?
Well, you could have a bad market very, very quickly. The market could easily come down 25%, but that wouldn't be necessarily the end of the world from the economy's point of view.
Well, a lot of this hinges on rates go up, but if you get other stimulus from tax cuts, that's another thing. This is something I raised with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, this idea about tax cuts and where we go from here and how they paid for this and mortgage deductions, charitable deductions, and that they won't be touched. He says, anyway, this is what he said on this matter. Take a look. Even if you take away those deductions, it is still a big tax cut for the upper income. Are there other things you would do or phase out to compensate for that?
Well, let me first clarify. We are not taking away the charitable deduction, and we are leaving the mortgage interest deduction as is. We think those
for the upper income as well.
Absolutely. We think those are both very, very important.
Steve Leeb's reaction to that was, yippee! Anyway.
No.
I'm done.
Whenever I see that guy's face, it just...
It's kind of like...
It's just scary.
It is a little scary, but there are even scarier guys.
All right, but I do want to get... Thank you for noting that. But,
there's Sebastian, Gorka.
Sure.
I mean, he is a scary
Lizzie,
guy.
I want to get to what he's saying, because it really touched on the wealthy, that they're not going to the top 1%. They're not going to get this tax break that they're envisioning, that we're going to offset whatever bennies they're getting with a lower rate by either limiting their allowances, breaks, deductions, and all. But clearly among them was not the mortgage interest deduction or the charitable deduction. So I don't know what else he would do to offset that, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, you know, that's been the running fight over how do you pay for it. Because if they're going to put in budget reconciliation, you have to have revenue offsets, right?
Right.
And to get that 51-vote threshold and avoid the Democrat filibuster, that's the name of the game. So, but sitting aside...
And they're going to use dynamic accounting.
Yeah, all that. But that's a strategy. In order to get tax reform and Obamacare reform through, you want that 51%, like 51 vote in the Senate.
Right.
So if you don't touch mortgage, you don't interest, you don't touch the charitable, what do you go after?
That's what I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't get any.
Yeah, I mean, he wants to boost military spending. He wants a $1 trillion infrastructure project, and he wants to slash taxes. Yet the mortgage deduction is going to stay intact. But I think up to $1 million. I mean, wherever they are right now, they're going to stay the same.
Right.
But it's got to be paid for somehow, and something's going to have to get cut, and that's going to be a battle royale.
Yeah.
It will, but I mean, I don't know exactly how they do all this figuring, but if they're going forward, I mean, one line I remember from the Trump speech before Congress, which really struck it, you know, it made me feel okay about the guy.
It wasn't China?
No, it wasn't China. But China is a major problem. And that, incidentally, is why he's probably going after Russia, to insinuate himself in that situation. Everybody's saying, why don't people give him a little possible credit? Why does everyone have to say that, you know, he's somehow involved in some
I do think,
thing?
Gas, what will be a news alert to the upper income folks if they don't get a tax cut.
Listen, you're absolutely right. And if and your earlier segment today where the woman, the economist, her name escapes me, made the excellent point about how a lot of people are pricing in a cut of the corporate tax down to 25%, not 20, not 15.
You don't want to disappoint.
That is a real problem. But, you know, I will say
Yeah.
this, Neil. I mean, you brought this up a bunch of times about the timing. If you talk to people on the Hill, they don't believe, and these are Republican staffers, don't believe we're getting tax reform this year. This is Republican staffers. They don't even know where the budget is. He doesn't have a budget.
Okay, Neil, I'm sorry, because he interrupted me. But
You did, didn't he?
But you got me talking about China. But, okay, one word I remember.
Not that easy.
One phrase I remember, a big fat tax cut for the middle class.
Right.
I have not heard any president saying that, except for maybe Obama. It was a throwaway line. This is a Republican saying that. First one I've ever heard saying that. He can't take away mortgage deductions and charity.
And he's not.
And still
But then, to Liz's
but he
point,
has
then,
to play the Republican line.
To Liz's point, you got to figure out what he's going to do.
He has to play the Republican line, Neil. I mean, if he wants to give the middle class a big tax cut, and I believe he does.
I think we should talk about PCE in China at the bar.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
do.
He was the one that told me. He said China.
Yeah, he did. He started it.